Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Girija. My name is Girija Patel. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I am a podcaster, I am an educator, I am a businesswoman, I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girija, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girija and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session. Hi, everyone. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you how to stay legally legit while you are collecting emails. Now, before we do get started, I have to share a disclaimer with you, and that is that I am a lawyer in Houston, Texas, but I'm not your lawyer. And while I am sharing some legal information with you, but this information is super generic and it's for educational purposes only. And so if you do have questions that are pertaining to you, that is specific to you, please go and seek an attorney and go talk to them and see how you can navigate your legal strategies and your legal needs at that point in time. So now let's get started. How to collect emails. And it's not just the legal side of it, but it's also the business strategy and the tips side of it also. And all of that, though, is integrated. They are not living on separate islands. They're all integrated and inherently they are co-mingled with one another. So you cannot separate the two. Because while you're collecting, you also need to make sure you are complying with the law. And I know that we have given our emails left, right, and center without even thinking sometimes because we just want whatever's sitting there. And we're like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. You want my email? Here, take it. I know I'm not the only one that's done that. I know many of you have done that also. And I know that we also employ certain strategies like that to get others onto our email list because at the end of the day, email list is where it is at. That is where you have a lot of your company assets sitting there is the email list because that is your customer, that is your consumer. And so whether you are looking to sell your business one day or whether you're just looking to make sure that, hey, just in case one social media platform dies, it doesn't mean that my business is dead because I have an amazing email list here. So these are so many reasons that we are wanting to make sure that we're protecting those email lists, but we're also doing it in a way that is safe and safeguarding them and also making sure that we are safeguarding ourselves with regards to the law. So one of the big basic rules that is out there in the United States is that you can collect emails and send an email out to somebody who is not necessarily on your email list per se, or someone who has given you prior consent to send that email out to them, as long as you have a place where it's clear day and night that you can unsubscribe. It's apparent, it's clear, it's easy, and also you're honoring that unsubscription as well. So you can do it as long as you have that unsubscribe aspect and availability and accessibility, and you are honoring it. Also in the United States, you can buy or sell email lists as well. And that's okay, as long as you have that in your privacy policy, telling everybody that this is what I do with my emails collected, that I am selling to third parties or I am buying from third parties. And then also, again, the unsubscribe option is clear, evident, and accessible, and you are honoring it. So that kind of takes me to the privacy policy. Privacy policy is very important. Privacy policy is also required by law. If you have a website, which I'm sure you do, and if you don't, then you need to get one, but your privacy policy should be clearly stated on your website. It is required by law. I'm sure you've also heard of terms and conditions, which is also not required by law, but is also very important to have on your website. But today we're going to really focus on the privacy policy itself. What is a privacy policy? Well, the privacy policy is telling your users, the people who are entering your website and walking through the different pages of your website, And it's essentially your website is a gateway to your business. It's like your business, but virtual. So imagine somebody walking into your standalone business, and that is what your website is, right? And so you're telling them, hey, listen, when you walk into my business, this is what you should expect with the information that you're sharing about yourself. Now, what happens is that online, when we're virtual, a lot of times there's a lot of things that are happening, and cookies are happening so they can kind of see where you're coming from, where you're going, how you're going, what your trends are. And so all of these things are getting collected or being generated just by the mere fact of using a website at times, or the platform that you are using has it itself. And so you are collecting personal information. And that's what the privacy policy is protecting: personal information of your user or the consumer at the end of the day. And so personal information can be as simple as your name. It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than a simple name. And then it can be as complicated as getting somebody's very, very private information onto your website for whatever purposes that you're trying to do that. So whether it's credit card information, social security, or other very important and private information. And so your privacy policy should be very clear on what it's collecting, why it's collecting it, who it's collecting it for, which purposes it's serving, how you will be using it, and all the information that you can provide for that. So what happens is that you are informing your user of all the different ways you are collecting your personal information and what you're doing with that personal information, who you're selling it to, if you are, or who you're using it for, how you are using that information. And also, it is sharing with them the ability to say no. Now, every state has its own privacy policy standards. But what happens is that because we're virtual, everybody can access our website, whether you are in the United States or not. But we're specifically talking about the United States today. We're not talking about necessarily the EU or other parts of the world. But we, as a rule of thumb, we should make sure that our privacy policy is in compliance with the most strict privacy policy requirements out there. And generally in the United States, it's California. So if we can comply with California, we've most likely complied with everybody else in the United States. Now, another very strict compliance privacy policy out there is the GDPR out of the EU. And fortunately, what happens is that because we're on the World Wide Web, people in the EU can access us. And so the limitation is not that your intention of who you're accessing, but really it's, can they access you if they're a resident of EU? And the answer is yes, and your compliance needs to be with the GDPR also. Other countries have also started following suit. And so it's really important to ensure that you're actually kind of taking an audit of who is my audience, and where am I really collecting a lot of emails? Am I collecting a lot from Canada or parts of South America? Or am I collecting from parts of EU? Make sure that you are in compliance with some of the most stringent privacy policies out there, because you could get fined, and those fines are hefty, and sometimes it can destroy a business also. So let's not do that, because we can absolutely avoid these issues. So the privacy policy is one of those ways that is required, but also where you can mitigate those issues as well. Now, a lot of times people like to do copy paste and put it on their website and say done. Problem is that, one, it may not be aligned with the way your business practices. It may not even be aligned with the way you are collecting and what you're collecting and why you're collecting. Now, the bigger the business is and the more complicated functions that businesses does, they might be acquiring a lot more personal information than what a simple retail online business might just be doing. And so you need to make sure that you know what kind of information you're collecting from your user, what you're doing with that information, how you're using it, like I said earlier, but then have those ideas already put in your privacy policy. So it's really reflecting the way your business functions and not the way somebody else's business functions, because copy paste is always easy, but it's not always the right thing, because there are people out there that will be reading that privacy policy and they will be wondering, really, does this really happen or does this not happen? And so either you are not sharing enough information properly on that privacy policy, or you're sharing too much, which doesn't even apply to you. So one, don't copy paste. Two, definitely you can lean into somebody else's, look at what they have, and apply it to yourself in the way that works for you in the best manner possible. So the privacy policy is super important, and it is required by law. I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately, and they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation. Another thing now, another facet to the privacy policy is that it needs to be easily accessible online. It cannot just be something that is hidden in the corner on the bottom in some area that nobody can find, right? You need to have it easily apparent. Some good business practices to do if you are not already doing them. Number one, have the privacy policy on every single page of your website, along with your terms and conditions and maybe even your contact information, just stuff that people look for all the time, but it's right there, easily accessible and apparent on every single page of your website. Number two, when somebody is either downloading an opt-in or purchasing something from your website, have a box or have something that pops up or that is already there present in the process of the purchase or process of the download, where they have to do an affirmative check on the I have read the privacy policy. In America, where, in the States, we're not required to do affirmative checks. However, it is good policy. Plus, that's where everybody's trending. So might as well get on board right now rather than having to go and change what you are doing later on, but just start the good practices right now where they have to say, actually check the box that's saying, yes, I have read the privacy policy. Yes, I have read the terms and conditions and I agree. The reason for that is that the GDPR requires it. There are other countries that require it. California doesn't, but yet what's going on is that everybody starts trending towards the stricter policies out there, especially in the global world that we're living in today. So have it where they are giving this affirmative check and acknowledgement to that privacy policy before they purchase, before they download something, where they're actually giving their personal information to you. And so when it's before, now they're okay with what you're asking them for. And there should be no confusion on what you're asking them for and why you're asking them for it, right? So have that as an affirmative checkbox and not something that is already tick marked for them or something that just doesn't even pop up, because we need to change those processes and operations if you haven't done so yet. So common ways of actually making those tangible changes on your website or even in any type of communication that you're having with your consumer or your user is: one, again, have the privacy policy at the bottom of every single page. On your newsletter, have it where they can, of course, unsubscribe, or even any email correspondence that you're sending them. It doesn't have to be just newsletter, but have a place where they're unsubscribing, and then also where it's like, hey, here's a privacy policy if you haven't read it yet, or here's another moment that you have to read this privacy policy, right? So you have it. You're not hiding anything, and it's there, it's apparent, it's obvious, and it's easily accessible. And that is the whole point of it. Your consumer should not be confused, and your consumer should be able to easily access aspects of your business that is somewhat invasive into their personal life as well, even though they might be very knowingly giving you that information and they're getting something amazing in return for it as well. So in all, having a privacy policy is extremely important and required by law. So if you don't have one yet, most definitely go get it. I have templates on yourcontractbuddy.com where you guys can access that as well. Now, quickly, I'm going to actually touch on the EU and the GDPR. The reason is because inadvertently, intentionally, we might be reaching out to residents who are in the EU, and we need to have compliance as much as we can. So most privacy policies out there, the templates, or whether you're getting it custom made by a lawyer, they all include the GDPR aspect as well as the California privacy policy aspects as well. Now, the GDPR is essentially you are collecting information from EU users, so you need consent. At the end of the day, it's all about consent, and it's an informed consent where you are informing the user, again, like what I said earlier, about the who, the what, the why, the where, all of those things about the information that you're collecting, but then also you are getting a verifiable consent. So like I said earlier, it's just good practice to have that actual check mark where they're actually doing the checkbox, because GDPR requires it. And so might as well start complying with it now and putting it into the operations of your business now, rather than later on having to change everything when the world is now 10 steps ahead of you. So get that done now if you can. And it's also easy to withdraw and unsubscribe. Those are the three main things for most of all of these privacy policies. And a lot of times these unsubscription concepts are already integrated into whatever platform you're using for emails. And so that's wonderful. But if not, just verify that you do have that in your service, or they do provide it if you have to like affirmatively ask for it or not. With the GDPR, you also want to make sure that you are creating a certain type of record. And it's not just a record of who is getting on your email, but it's a record of how they got onto your email list, what they're doing on your website, and if they have asked to unsubscribe, when was the unsubscription requested, where was it requested from. So having a record is required under the GDPR, and also having an access point in your business where people can file GDPR complaints or they can ask questions is very important also. And so that is something that you need to have. And I would definitely consult a lawyer to make sure that you are GDPR compliant, especially if your users are coming out of the EU. You definitely need to make sure that your compliance is there and you are doing it in a way that is working for your business, aligned with your business, but then also that is making your customer and your users comfortable. So we switch some gears and talk about other legal obligations under the law, under the CAN-SPAM Act, with regards to the email marketing that you are doing. Now, email marketing is also regulated in how you can do it, and the way you do it is also regulated. And the reason is because you don't want to confuse the consumer. They also want to protect the consumer from fraud or from things that's just not needed. And so the CAN-SPAM Act kind of governs that area of the email process of your business. Now, some of the legal obligations that you have, there's about 6 of them. Number one is using a truthful header. And what does that mean? The header means where it's coming from. Who is this contact that's sending you something? So you have to give the right address, the email address. You also have to give your right contact information and a phone number or a physical address as well. So that way the domain name is correct also. So they know who to access and they know who to talk to if they need to talk to somebody, or if they need to file a complaint, they know who to file a complaint for. And that way there is no confusion on who is sending that information. And so you need to have a truthful header information as well. Number 2 is that it can't be misleading. The subject line cannot be misleading. The subject line needs to be relevant to what's actually in the content of that email. So whether it's a newsletter or whether it's a promotion or whether it's anything like that, it needs to be relevant to what's in the newsletter or to that email that you're sending out to them. So then that's what the subject line needs to be. It can't be saying something, but then the reality is something totally different. And so that's misleading and that's not okay and is frowned upon by the government. Number 3, which I see a lot of us not doing, is that you need to identify the message as an ad. And so there's 3 types of messages. There's transactional emails that are being sent out, and those are generally like, okay, I'm paying this much and this is my invoice or this is that bill. Those are transactional in nature. Then you have one that's relationship in nature, and those are where you've already have a relationship with somebody and you're just talking to them about changes in products or services, or you're updating them about certain things about their relationship that they might have with your business. And then you have other non-commercial emails, but you also have commercial emails. So there's 4 types in general. So like the 4th one is the commercial emails, and those are where your ads, your promotions are happening. And sometimes it could be with third parties, or it could be with somebody that you're collaborating with. And so you need to make sure that your email kind of says that. And it doesn't have to be like ad, but it also shouldn't just be like, oh, I'm just going to do this for fun. And hey, look at this. This is so beautiful. You want to buy it? It's just spell it out. Be clear about it. And the reason is because you don't ultimately want the consumer to be confused. This is all to protect the consumer, the reader, the user. And so there's clarity, there is transparency at the same time. So you want to say that this is an ad. However, whichever way you might want to say that, you need to kind of make it clear that it's an ad. There's really no clear way of doing it. There's no identified way of communicating this as well. But as long as the message is clear about it, and there's no confusion on whether this is something that you're promoting or whether you're not promoting it, then you should be okay. Now, number 4 that you need is that you need to tell recipients where you're located. So it needs to have an address, a physical address of your location. Just like earlier, where you need to have a truthful header of where the email is coming from, who the email is coming from, the domain is correct also. Similarly, in this, you need to also have the physical address, and it needs to be a clear postal address, and not just some random address that no one can actually reach you on. So it has to be a real address that somebody can actually physically reach you on. Number 5, monitor what other parties are doing on your behalf. So you might have hired a company to send out emails, or you might be working with a third party that's giving you services through online services or whatever. But either way, whoever you're working with, 1, you need to make sure that they're aligned with your values and your mission of your business. Number 2, you want to make sure also that they have a good reputation in the market and in the industry, because now you are connecting yourself with them. And number 3, you need to monitor at the end of the day. You don't have to be micromanaging, but you need to monitor. You need to make sure that the message they're sending is accurate, it's truthful. And also the business processes and procedures that they're working on is honest, and it's genuinely aligned with what your business is doing and how it's doing. So you need to monitor third-party actors in your business as well. Because what can happen is that ultimately, if they do something wrong, you can be held responsible for it too. And you might have all the contracts in the world that indemnify you, but sometimes that just doesn't work, and you can't contract out responsibility or accountability. And that is a thing. And so make sure you monitor them and you are abreast of what their practices are and what they're doing for your business, and if it's working for your business, and if it's aligned with your privacy policy or with the other things that you do in your business. And number 6, super important, I don't think I've mentioned it enough, is unsubscribe. Make sure the unsubscribe is available. It needs to be clear. It needs to be accessible. It needs to be obvious, and you need to honor it. If somebody says unsubscribe me, honor it, because if you don't, it can actually become problematic. And what can happen is that if you're not following the rules or complying with them, you can face fees, you can face other types of sanctions, and it could just cause a lot of financial burden that you could absolutely avoid. And so with that being said, here are some tangible ways to collect emails effectively, but also in a way that is in compliance. So just as a recap, let's talk quickly about the fact that 1, we need a privacy policy that is explaining to everybody how, who, what, where, why we are collecting personal information, and make sure it aligns with the way your business is actually functioning. Number 2 is to make sure that, yes, you have a privacy policy now in place, but you also want to make sure that you're in compliance with other countries that you might be having a lot of users coming from. And so check out their privacy policies, see if it's in alignment with what you've written, and also comply with what their requirements are. Number 3, when you are sharing information with others through email, that is also governed by the CAN-SPAM Act, and that is also has parameters. So like we discussed, the 6 parameters, or the 6 things that you need to kind of make sure that you are in compliance with. So don't forget those 6 things that you need to be in compliance with. Now, finally, how can we collect emails legally? What are some ways and some options to collect the emails legally? So 1 is opt-ins. We all have those free opt-ins, freebies that we're giving out, resources that we're giving out. Totally fine, as long as you have your privacy policy that is ever apparent right there for them to actually Read an affirmative, yes, I acknowledge it. Yes, I have read it. And yes, I agree to it. So have all of those things available and have the affirmative action of acknowledgement and of agreement as well. Other ways also is through Facebook, Google Ads, third parties. Now, a lot of times third parties have their own privacy policies, and so they're responsible for sharing that with their users. But at the end of the day, just make sure that those third parties are aligned with you and how you're functioning and how your business is functioning. And so great ways to collect emails is through Facebook ads and Google ads and other mechanisms like that. Other ways to collect the email legally is through your website itself. It's through the pop-up boxes that show up on your website or through a newsletter sign up or something like that. But again, have the privacy policy available for them to see before they sign up. And another way to legally collect email addresses is from a reputable source, a source that a lot of times people say, you know, you shouldn't be buying emails, but if your email is coming from a reputable source and it's also coming from a place that kind of has the market that you're looking for or the industry that you are trying to target, then it may not be a bad idea. As long as you're letting them know that, hey, listen, I'm sending this out to you. This is an ad, and here's an unsubscribe if you don't want to get these emails from me anymore. So all in all, make sure that you have your information that you are sharing with everybody is clear, it's available, it's accessible, and it is obvious. It's not hidden somewhere, and that there's consent at the end of the day from your subscriber or from your user. And when they have given you that consent, it's not a consent that you've automatically checkboxed yourself, but it's a consent that they have to affirmatively check for you, that they agree with it, they understand it, they have read it, and they're okay with you sending them emails and sending them information that is not just maybe promotional, but also new information and marketing material as well. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I had such a great time sharing with you some of the legal aspects of collecting emails. Wishing you all the best in your business. Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girija. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.